So we're learning Tanya chapter 35, Perek Lamed Hey. We're on page 88. We are about 8, 9 lines down from the top of the page. After the period, the line begins with the words B'yichud Gomer. The Balatanya here said something revolutionary, as he does in each chapter of Tanya, multiple times. And here, the revolutionary statement that stands out is actually in the bottom of Mem Dalet, the previous page, where he says, Ki even the neshama of a tzaddik gomer, number one, he's a complete tzaddik, make a comma. Oived Hashem b'yirah ve'ava b'tainugim. Number two, he serves Hashem with awe and love of delights. I mean, he's really in love with God. Right? Aval pikein eina betela b'mitzias legamri. From that perspective alone, he is not completely nullified, submerged in the Godhead to Hashem. Libotel v'likolel, and then he goes on to the top of page 88. Ba'ir Hashem mamish liyois lachodim umiyuchodim b'yichud gomer rak. He is still davar b'fnei atzma yerei Hashem ve'oyavoy. So we have here a very interesting distinction between someone who is completely bottled, nullified, humbled before, subservient before Hashem to the point where his entire mitziyut is God, a walking God. Then there's a second type of a person that he is davar b'fnei atzmai. He is an independent being. The only thing is, he happens to have inserted within himself an awe and love for God of the highest degree. And, do we really know who's who? The answer is, first of all, it's not our business. Our business should be just about ourselves. But when it becomes our business, let's say someone seeking a tzaddik wants to identify and ask themselves a question: is this person really a tzaddik? In other words, the person, the whole attitude, stinks. In other words, you're such a refined person that you need the highest level of tzaddik. Come on. The second level of tzaddik is not good enough for you. But be that as it may, what's the difference between an expert, a maven, and not an expert? I'll give you just an example. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, the posek in America of the last generation. What was his uniqueness, in addition to, of course, his humility, which was for a Litvischer Gadol to have such humility was coming definitely from his ancestral background, where his mother's side came from Koidenover Hasidim. It's written in the introduction to the 8th volume of Igros Moshe, if you care to read it. It's very interesting. And I spoke to his grandson, who substantiated that it's true. But put that aside. You know what the difference was? The difference was that when you came to ask him a shaila, and you came with very serious questions, for the regular questions, you didn't need to go to Reb Moshe. You could go to any Rav, any rabbi, who knew the halachas of, let's say, daily life, or this or that. But when it came to life and death questions, when it came to abortions, when it came to in vitro fertilization, real serious shilas with gittin and kiddushin, most rabbonim here in the greater United States and the New York tri-state area for sure, the joke was that when you get smicha, you get smicha. You have to make sure you have Rabbi Feinstein's telephone number along with the smicha, because those shilas, those heavy halachic questions, were beyond even very knowledgeable rabbis and rabbanim. So when you went to the Moshe, or you were told by your Rav to go, this question you need to ask Reb Moshe, or I will ask that question to Reb Moshe for you. When you received the answer, you knew this is the answer. No shilas. Now, there were some rabbanim who disagreed, but that's I'm not gonna. Sometimes it was politics. I don't want to go into that. That's the Satmar Rav, had some serious halachic disagreements with Reb Moshe. And there was they tell the story that one of his Hasidim, Rabbanim, Satmar, wanted to really have it out with Reb Moshe. I think it was in 63, 64, when the whole question of in vitro fertilization came to the floor. People didn't have children and they wanted to use this method. Is it considered, is there a vatola, and then are you allowed to do it? It was a very big issue. And Moshe gave a psak, I believe, that it was allowed, again, with certain conditions. And the Satmar Rav, who was a big Talmud Chacham, disagreed, and he was livid. And his Hasidim felt that way. So one of them wanted to, go to meet with Reb Moshe and really have it out with him. So he said, you better not go, because he will wipe the floor with you in halacha. So if you're looking to be embarrassed, go. The Satmar Rav's issue, besides that he disagreed halachically, was also the Satmar Rav. His tendency was to use Gedorim, enactments, fences. In other words, even if technically you could justify this, it's going to lead to a breach of a serious halachic issue. And therefore, don't do A so you don't get to B. Or don't do B to get to A. You know what I'm saying? So that was a shita. And in my book on Satmar and Lubavitch, I wrote about that. It seems to me, from studying, him and his shitas, and especially how it relates to Zionism and things like that, I believe that a lot of it, or most of it, was a geder. It wasn't that he believed that it's forbidden. He didn't want you to get to do the hardcore transgression, and therefore he put up this big facade in a big way, and loud, with a lot of colors, you know what I mean, with all the schmaltz. So this Rav, who wanted to go have it out with Reb Moshe, the Satmar Rav told him, you better stay away, because he'll wipe the floor with you halachically. It's better that we kind of talk about the geder as the reason why we shouldn't do it. In other words, that people don't know the laws and they'll just, not indulge, but in vitro fertilization, even by not trying other methods, and therefore use that as a heter. And that was, so why am I saying that? Because the idea of a maven, an expert. An expert is, that's it. You're on solid ground. So the Alter Rebbe here in Tanya talks about a spiritual expert. A spiritual expert is rare. Another great tzaddik that I've been talking about here in the community with one of my chavedim, one of my friends, is the Ribnitzer Rebbe. You've heard of the Ribnitzer Rebbe. He's buried in Muncie. He was a Yid from the Ukraine, and I just recently, heard some stories that are literally out of this world. I'm telling you, like someone who I know lives 2 blocks away. He owned some buildings, and there was some kind of church nearby, I think, where there was a priest, and they got into a whole thing, and the guy was going to take him down, and the Jewish landowner, this fellow, did something that you could call him on it. I don't know the exact details, but the guy the man himself tells over all the details. Says it in Yiddish, but it's online. And he went to the Ribnitzer Rebbe, who for a while lived here in Borough Park. For plenty of years, he lived here in Borough Park. And he gave him a coin. He gave him 2 things. He gave him a coin, I think a quarter, and I think he rubbed the quarter. Have to rehear the tape, and he gave it to him. And then he gave him a pair of tefillin, I think his tefillin or another set that he had. And he said, go to court on the day of the court case and bring these 2 things there and hold them with you as you're on the witness stand. Everyone knew that Ribnitzer Rebbe is a miracle maker. So as he walks out, the Ribnitzer Rebbe calls him. He says, come here, come back. He says, Rebbe, yes? He says, give me back the tefillin. I don't want you to take the tefillin. So he says, Rebbe, I'm going to feel so much better standing there holding your tefillin. He says, give me back the tefillin now. And he saw that Rebbe means business, and he's not going to go and ask why he thought he gives him back the tefillin. He says, you take the coin, and you go with the coin. And then he says, you will come back, and we were going to say l'chaim, because you're going to win, and you will notify my Gabe, after the decision. I'm making it very short. There's a lot of details. So he goes. Oh, 1 second. And he tells his lawyer, a Jewish fellow, a Jewish man, that he has a coin of the Ribnitzer Rebbe, and he's going to be taking it to the judge, to the court case, and he's going to hold it, and if need be, tell everyone what this is. The lawyer said, if you do that, I'm resigning. You're out of your mind. You're going to embarrass the Jewish people, and you're going to embarrass me, and I will not allow that. Vayihi hayoim. Came the day, the court case. He stands up, and he's crunching the quarter in his hand. The judge was an Italian woman, and she was known not as the most, who loved so much, Jews, etc. That's what that was the word on the street, okay? And he stands up and he tells the judge. Oh no, so the judge sees he's holding something. So she says, sir, what are you holding? She says, I'm holding a coin that my rabbi gave to bless me that I should win the case. The whole courtroom broke out in laughter. Oh my gosh, what a nut we have here standing here. And it was like, and there was a witness. There was one witness from the church who was going to be the key witness and basically say that this Jew landowner did whatever he did. When the Jewish lawyer heard him tell the judge that he has a coin of the Ribnitzer Rebbe, his rabbi, he called him out. He stopped the case, called him out, and he says, I'm resigning. And he signed papers, and he gave them in to the judge. I'm no longer judge. You're on your own. Oh, no problem. What should he do? So he calls up the Gabbai to please get a bracha, because now it's even worse. And the Gabbai says, the Rebbe told you to hold the coin. Stand firm. Don't lose yourself. It looks very bad. Okay. Oh, and then there was recess, and she says, we'll come back. They come back. She calls the witness. Please present your case. What did you see? What did you know? And he says, Your Honor, I must tell you, Your Honor, I myself did not see this. I was loyal to my priest, and he asked me to say this, and I agreed. Quiet in the courtroom. She turns to him, to the landowner. She says, Can I see that coin? No, she asks, Can I touch that coin? He says, No way, you can't touch this coin, but I'll show it to you. And he brings it to her to look at the coin that the Ribnitzer Rebbe gave him. She said, Case dismissed. And now, to the Jew, she says, Go and sign papers to arrest the priest, the witness, and whoever else. So you know what the Jew said? No, no, no. I will not do that without my rabbi saying that's okay. He called up, and the rabbi asked the Ribnitzer Rebbe, he says, Don't you dare do that. Don't sign papers, don't put them behind bars. Just come here and let's say l'chaim. Now, this isn't 200 years ago with the Baal Shem Tov, with the Chayz of Lublin, with the Alter Rebbe. This is 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago in Brooklyn. You know, an expert. So I share the story because the Alter Rebbe here talks about two types of tzaddikim. One that's completely submerged to Hashem, totally bottle, subservient to God, where he becomes the embodiment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then there's someone else, in the Alter Rebbe's languages, who davar b'fnei atzmai. He's not one with God. He is himself. He happens to refine himself, develop himself, and have awe and fear for Hashem. Wonderful. So I said these two things, both with Moshe, which is a halachic issue, and with Ribnitzer, which is like, miracles and Rebbes and all that. There's a time and place for tzaddikim. You understand? There is a time and place for going to a tzaddik, but remember, one second, Rebbe, I'm going to let you talk in a second. You have to be willing and ready before you ask the tzaddik to listen to what he says. I mean, the Jewish landowner got a lawyer, but he went all out. He believed completely that the Rebbe's words are going to work. And therefore, lawyer, quit. You want to quit? Quit. Don't quit. You're only someone that I need, for technicalities. But the Ribnitzer Rebbe is the one who establishes. That's emunah. And the same is with a psak. If of an expert, a yid like a Moshe, gives a psak, that's the psak. There's nothing, maybe, and who. We learned in the Parshas Noach, right? Noach mikatnei amona hoya. He was from the small believers. When he sees things are going good, I'm God's person. When things aren't, I'm not. Or the famous little anecdote, the ladies in shul and she makes a pledge of a lot of money, and then walking out she says, I didn't really mean it. She continues walking over a rickety bridge, and it's shaking. It's about to fall. He says, God, I'm going to give my pledge. Unfortunately, we are sometimes this way. Okay. Hillel and then Moshe, okay?
Your story reminded me of a story of my great-great-grandfather that I've always had a little bit of a question about. So I'd like to tell it and then ask you for your comments about it.
Okay.
Because the story is that a man came to he was the Rebbe of Kamarna. His name was Eliezer Tzvi of Kamarna, the second Rebbe of Kamarna. And he had been summoned to court by the family of a Russian officer who accused this Jew of having caused the suicide of this Russian officer because the Jew had loaned him money, had loaned the officer money, and he hadn't been able to repay it, and they accused him of sort of driving him to suicide.
Okay.
So it sounds like a pretty hard case for a Jew to win in a Ukrainian and a Russian court. So the commander says to him, he says, "Look at my face and then close your eyes." And he says, can you see my entire face in your mind's eye? And he has him do it several times until you can fully visualize the Rebbe's face. And he says to him, when you go to court, just keep your mind on my face, and it'll go well for you. And so the guy gets to court, and he sees the proceedings, and he sees the state prosecutor giving this fiery speech against him. He freaks out, and forgets all about the Rebbe's face, and then all of a sudden he remembers it, and he struggles really hard to recall the Rebbe's face. He blocks everything else out to do that, and as soon as he gets the whole image of the Rebbe's face, the prosecutor starts coughing. And every time he starts to speak again, he starts coughing. The judge orders a recess and brings him back, and it's happened several times. And then takes him up to lunch, and they have a break for lunch. And the prosecutor's fine until he starts the proceedings in the afternoon. And the judge said, "Case dismissed," and sends him home. So I love this story, and it's always one of my favorites. But I was always just curious about the meaning of why to visualize my face. I have some thoughts about it, but I'd be curious about your thoughts about it.
Okay, we definitely find both in Chazal and also definitely in Hasidic lore this idea of visualizing a tzaddik, a Rebbe's face. And what's the idea? That a tzaddik, a Rebbe, who we believe that their neshama is plugged in with Hashem without much static or any static, is representative of God's pnimius, God's panim, God's face. And it says in the Torah, "U'moirachem v'chitchem al chayos ha'oretz," right? Your fear will be on the animals of the land when you come in, and they'll all run away. The lions and right, like I told you, those mountain lions in Colorado.
That was part of Cain's fear.
Right.
When he said when.
Okay, so in other words, the tzaddik's panim is imbued with Hashem's panim. And when you have Hashem's panim, it impacts those that it needs to impact, both in a way, a story like yours or a story like mine or other such stories or such ideas. There's Kedusha there. So that is the significance. And just to support what you're saying, the Rebbe told there was a girl, teenager, 16, 17, 18, who wrote to the Rebbe. She lived in South Africa, and we have the actual ksav, the Rebbe's holy handwriting, to her question or her issue. And she wrote to the Rebbe that she's scared. She's scared about this, about that. You know what the Rebbe said? Take a picture of my father-in-law, carry it with you, and look at it. So again, the face of a tzaddik. By the way, there is a tradition in Chabad. Some do it, some don't. But I shouldn't say it's a tradition. I've seen it done, where many times they'll put a picture of the Rebbe under the baby's head when the baby before the milah, before the circumcision. And again, again, it's not halachic. But what's the idea? The idea is that the tzura of a tzaddik, the face of a tzaddik, is very, very powerful, because he lives the face of Hashem. So you're bringing that to the table. That's the way I would explain it.
Yeah, that was more or less, the way I thought about it. I also thought about it from a psychological point of view. That one also just an exercise in emunas chachamim, to be able to concentrate on that, but also from a psychological point of view, it's like a concentrative, contemplative exercise that takes your mind off your fear, so that
right.
interrupts the pattern of fear, because fear mobilizes the body, and visualization disrupts that.
Okay.
One of the ways I thought about that.
Yeah, shakoyach, that, so you're saying that that psychology would support this behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, Moshe, sorry, you had to wait a long time, so your question or your comment must be great. Go ahead.
Okay, to hear that story from Hillel was well worth the wait.
Okay.
It's a great story. I just wanted to know, just going back a bit, I can understand Rabbi Rav Moshe Feinstein being an expert in halacha, psak, etc.
Right.
Old. But I want to know, I wanted to just maybe for you to elucidate for us, give us a little bit of a feeling of the expertness. How would you? I understand that the Ribnitzer, etc., was an expert, but my question is, in what? Meaning, like, okay, he was expert in being a Rebbe, but more than that.
He was an expert in fasting, in going to the mikveh twice a day, once before davening, once before Ma'ariv or midnight. He was an expert in avodas Hashem. He didn't just do abracadabra. This is a man who worked on himself. You saw the way he worked on himself. So he made his guf. He sanctified his body, when his body became a vessel, an abode for Hashem's presence, for Hashem's countenance. So in that particular case, in his style, for whatever reason, the bracha of miracles went through him. And by the way, they say the same thing in a similar way about the Belzer Rebbe. The Belzer Rebbe, who lived in Tel Aviv, after the Holocaust, on the Achad Am Street, and I've been there a few times, as I've told you. He was a very short little man. He didn't eat and sleep much, right? So the Rabbi Yoel Kahn, said to a Belzer here who would drive him to classes from Crown Heights to Borough Park, he says, by me, he says, Rabbi Yoel says, it's not a question that he didn't eat and didn't sleep. He's a big tzaddik. The question is, how is he able to eat a little and sleep a little if he was an angel? So, Moshe, when you talk about these people, and they say whatever came out of his mouth was fulfilled, So again, why Hashem chose this tzaddik and this tzaddik that their words were accepted by God, by Hashem, and right away, it's money in the bank. It's guaranteed. That we don't know. But your question's a good one. I'm answering it that we saw how they lived. They worked on themselves. You could see them refining themselves, so they became an expert in avodas Hashem. You hear, Moshe? Just like Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was an expert in halacha, they were experts in avodas Hashem. That's the way I would answer your question. Yes? Yes.
Okay, I understand. One clarification. What you just said before, you called him a tzaddik. You referred to as a tzaddik.
Yeah, yes.
I'm just curious. When you say those words, the tzaddik, you mean the Alter Rebbe's definition of a tzaddik?
No. First of all, I'm no Manda Umar. You know, I have as little information about this as mostly everyone else. But the classical term tzaddik used in Chazal and in the community, you know.
I understand.
Let me say this. They were experts in miracle making. How about that? And they were definitely tzaddikim. But if you're going to ask me, were they this level of tzaddik, that level, that's a whole other discussion. And it's not really relevant to us. You know, what's relevant to us is that they were great tzaddikim. Were they the tzaddik Yisoy Doilam, which is from chapter 1 in Tanya? Were they from Lamed Vov tzaddikim? That's a whole, you know, who knows? But by the way, there are gradations in tzaddik. There is a sikha, the Rebbe, I don't know if it's in English, in one of the first volumes of Kutei Sichos, where he goes through 4 to 5, 6 different levels based on Tanya and other things of tzaddikim. Lamed Vov tzaddikim, tzaddik Yisod Olam, Nosi Hador. You already got 3, you know, and etc. But for our purposes, you know, we're not going into those differences right now. Moshe, am I clear? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
And let me say one more thing. In other words, what the Alter Rebbe says here, whether the person is a tzaddik who is a dover b'fnei atzmai, Yirei Hashem v'oyavai, or he's a tzaddik who's miyuchid, I can't tell you. You know, I'm sure if you ask a Belzer Chassid, he'll say, my Rebbe is the second. And if you ask a Karlina Chasser, he'll say, my Rebbe. You would expect and hope that Chassidim of a certain Rebbe feel that way about that Rebbe. I think I told you when I was bringing once to Yerushalayim in Heichel Menachem, and it was a big group of Gerech Hasidim, and they had some questions, and they asked in a respectful way. So about the Rebbe, and so I said to them, the question is not, the issue is not that you should believe that the Lubavitcher Rebbe is the Mashiach. I can perfectly understand why you don't believe but my question to you is, do you believe that your Ger Rebbe is the Mashiach? The place was silent. No one answered. Now, of course, they would probably say that's not the criteria in Ger for a Rebbe being a Rebbe. Even if he's not a Mashiach, he's a Rebbe. Okay. And I was arguing, no, that maybe technically it's not the criteria, but if you really, really believe in your tzaddik, then along with the miracles and everything else, and the tish and the yechidus and the blessings, should be that he's capable of being a Mashiach.
But what does it matter?
So
we just want Mashiach.
So we're middle of a class now. So the point being that there are different levels of tzaddikim, and for our purposes, and we'll continue tomorrow, Mitzvah Shem, is that the Alter Rebbe says a fantastic thing here, and his point is, let me just finish. What's the Alter Rebbe's point, Moshe? The difference between the neshama that a Jew has its attachment to God versus doing a deed. Uvdan Tovin from the Zohar that he quotes early. The Uvdan Tovin, he's arguing in chapter 35, based on the Zohar, is the oil for the wick to catch on fire to the light. I.e., for the body to catch on light from the soul, it needs the ma'aseh, the one-time putting on tefillin, the one mezuzah, the one deed, and that's even, because that is God's will. That's Hashem. Ratzon Hashem. The neshama is a very nice thing, but the neshama has its own independent kind of yearning and desire. And any independence outside of God is already not one with Hashem. Chevra will continue tomorrow. Have a great day. Zayizim.